All right, folks, a lot is going on in the world, and we'll see who else joins us on this particular edition of World Edition on December 4th, 2024. So, almost 3 weeks away from Christmas and all along those lines. So, and the one thing that people will be talking about is Christmas shopping and all along those lines. So, it'll be definitely interesting to see what goes on in that space. The CEO of United Healthcare is shot in Midtown Manhattan. So, that's one of the stories that is coming out of New York. The United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, was killed by a masked gunman outside of that particular um, area, outside of Midtown Hilton Hotel. And Trump is considering DeSantis for defense secretary as his support for Hexas is faltering. So uncertainty looms over Trump's defense secretary pick, Pete Hedges. So definitely it looks like DeSantis may be considered for that role as well. And Hedges' mother takes to Fox News in a bid to save son's nomination. So definitely it looks like this will be interesting to see how this plays out as well. So definitely, folks will be continuing to have conversations around that and how that will go, and all along those lines. So definitely, a lot's taking place in the world as always. South Korea's martial law is a painful reminder of how easily democracy can be threatened. Protesters are saying so. South Korea opposition files motion to impeach President Yoon Suk Yeol. So definitely that's what we'll see what's going on in there as definitely folks are paying attention to what's going on in South Korea. And the Philippines says China's Coast Guard fired water cannons and sideswiped its patrol vessel. So U.S. accuses China of illegal, dangerous maneuvers as Philippine vessels blasted with water cannons. So definitely there is a confrontation between Philippines and Chinese ships in the South China Sea. And France prime minister likely to be ousted in a no confidence vote. And definitely that's something that the folks there in France are worrying about. So the France prime minister could be forced to resign this week. So definitely we'll see how this goes on. And it looks like some people are wondering how investors are trading France's political chaos. So definitely political chaos can also have a lot to do with the investment world as well. And later on today, we'll have a modern investment with Sasha Starr. Who knows? He may touch on that. He may touch on some other issues going on in the investment space as well. And an archaeological dig at Notre Dame unearths 2,000 years of history. So definitely, this is an interesting historical note. So Macron has pleaded with Trump on phone to attend the Notre Dame reopening and all along those lines. And I think that he is attending that, if I remember the news from yesterday. And Biden in Africa decries the history of slavery and urges partnership. So in Angola, Biden warns that slavery's history should not be erased. So definitely, this is stuff that is going on as well. So um, and definitely one of the stories that was coming out was Welcome to America. Biden's bizarre remarks fume netizens as Angolan president tugs and guides him during the African trip. Like I said yesterday, Biden has pledged $1 billion in aid to Africa. And definitely some folks are wondering about that as North Carolina residents continue to struggle after Helene. So definitely is some money coming to the African continent. And that is some probably good news because we know that a lot of those countries are in financial trouble as well. So definitely it'll be very interesting to see how things play out in that part of the world. And Israel threatens to go deeper into Lebanon as strikes strain ceasefire. So definitely that's something going on in the Middle East. So the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah teeters as sides exchange fire. And Georgia protests, that's Georgia in Eastern Europe, gather momentum after pro-Russia party suspends EU bid. So definitely some folks are wondering whether the West will betray or save anti-Putin protesters in Georgia. And the Georgian opposition leader has been detained by police and beaten unconscious, his party says. And Trump's threatens terrorists to protect dollars against threats few see as real. So it looks like there is some notion that Trump would impose 100% tariffs on the BRICS nations. So we'll see how this all plays out as well. And Kyiv has issued an ultimatum on NATO membership. So Zelensky says NATO membership could end the hot phase. And looks like an abducted mayor there in Kiev was tortured to death in Russian captivity, according to what the governor in that area said, and all along those lines. So definitely it looks like definitely some things are continuing to develop in the Russian-Ukraine war as well. So let's see what's happening in the United States as well, and we'll see if anybody has joined the conversation as of yet. And we do see that we've got a few people that have joined the conversation, so we'll see what they've got on their mind after I get to some of the news items. Transgender right case lands at Supreme Court amid debate over a ban on medical treatment, and definitely there was a ban on gender affirming care. So definitely that's something going on as we're seeing that issue come to the Supreme Court. So we'll see how this all plays out. And I know that Nick follows things going on in the Supreme Court as well. And like I said earlier, Trump is considering DeSantis for the Pentagon, with Hedges under pressure over a series of allegations. So definitely it looks like Don DeSantis may have another job on his hand and everything if that would be the case. And it looks like a case of a missing Hawaii woman, Hana Kobashi, has taken another turn. So definitely a Hawaii woman landed in LA and disappeared. So folks are trying to figure out what was going on in that case as well. And an Indiana man discovers 2 kidnapped babies outside of his home, as it looks like he was retrieving some items of his and all along those lines. So a man getting a package was found missing babies in a ditch there in Indiana. The babies were in the back seat of a stolen car dumped outside on a freezing day. And fortunately, they were rescued by this very good Samaritan as he was picking up a package that was being delivered to him. And Democratic challenger Adam Gray flips California's 13th congressional district in nation's final House race. So Democrats flip in California, concludes the final unresolved U.S. House race, and all along those lines. So it looks like the Democrats have won that, but I think that they are still in the minority and all along those lines. And President Biden's growing worries spurred son's pardon without delay. So definitely a judge has delivered a scathing rebuke of Hunter's pardon. Can't rewrite history. And definitely even Newsom and Schiff are sharply criticizing the president for pardoning Hunter Biden. And View star Alyssa Farah Griffin slammed Joe Biden for pardoning his son. Why people don't trust Washington is what that particular star of that show said and everything. And a retired agent on how the FBI will react to Kash Patel's demand is one of the things that the Daily Beast was talking about. And it looks like Kash Patel, Trump's pick to lead the FBI, was targeted in an Iranian hack and everything. So definitely this is more of the things going on with the picks of the president-elect as he gets ready to come into office. And a key Trump ally calls allegations against Hedges disturbing. So it looks like despite agreement, Trump nominees may seek to avoid FBI background checks, but Trump has agreed to DOJ background checks on administration nominees and appointments. So we do know that some of these appointments might be getting background checks. And of course, there are new people that are being picked as well. So Trump DEA pick Chad Chronister withdraws from consideration. So now he's going to have to pick another person to lead the DEA. So it definitely looks like this case, he lost his choice to lead the DEA, and we'll have to find somebody else as well. But definitely it's be interesting to see how this all plays out. And Ukrainian ceasefire terms come into focus as Trump returns. So I know that there might be some people that are thinking that Trump might be trying to figure out a way to figure out how to end that particular conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And Trump team said to probe hostage deal as Israel awaits Hamas truce offer response. So Trump bucks Biden's don't doctrine on world stage, his adversaries with all hell to pay deadline. So like I said, I think it was in yesterday's news, he's basically said that Hamas will have all hell to pay unless the hostages are released before he gets into office. And if you're looking for snow, well, here in North Carolina, I think as I was watching the weather yesterday, we're getting ready to be we got the third highest period of no snow, and we might be getting ready to be in 15 days because it doesn't look like anything in the forecast to slide into the second most days of no snow, because I think it's something like 1,500 or something like that. So definitely it amounted into almost 3 years since there's been a serious snow accumulation here. Now we can't say that in the New York and New England area because another round of lake effect snow is coming to New York and Pennsylvania, and 3 feet of snow or more are ahead for the Great Lakes. So shovelable snow is around Rochester, and definitely up there, folks are finding snow that they can deal with, and all along those lines. And Trump and the Republican senators are planning their agenda for the first 30 days, and Thune plans sweeping bills on the border, defense, and energy in Trump's first day. So it looks like they'll be moving fast and all in that space. So definitely lots going on in the world, including something that I've got to mention just really quickly because I saw it on one of the late night talk shows and everything. So as I bring in definitely folks like Rick Rosner and others, I had heard about this whole notion of a drug cartel and all along those lines. But apparently there's a more dangerous cartel that is out there as well, because they conspire to spike frozen potato prices, according to a recent lawsuit, and all along those lines. So apparently there's a very dangerous, which I was not aware of unless you follow things like Mr. Potato Head and all along those lines, but apparently there's a very dangerous potato cartel that helped to raise the prices and all along those lines. So I want to bring Rick Rosner in, since I think it was one of the late night talk shows that I was watching, and they were talking about this very dangerous potato cartel that's out there. They talked about some other things that were quite interesting in the sense of lighthearted news, but also is very impactful because, even during the holiday seasons, a lot of people do a lot of their purchases, and one of the dishes that people will have on their table is awfully a potato-oriented dishes. And apparently, according to News Nation, 4 companies that produce 97% of the frozen potatoes for the U.S. and generate an estimated $68 billion each year are facing multiple lawsuits claiming they conspired to spike the price of French fries, hash browns, tater tots, and other food-related products.
So 50% in 4 years.
Yes,
47% in 4 years. So libs such as myself have been saying, maybe if you're going to yell at Biden for inflation, maybe also take a look at greedy corporations that are trying to increase their profit margins, and here's evidence of that.
And that's what they say, because 2 of the companies were Canadian based. That was McCain Foods Ltd. and Cavendish Farm Group's FarmScore, along with American companies Lamb Weston Holden and JR Simplot Company that were named in the class action suit, which was filed in Chicago. So definitely they're saying that they, like you said, I think the actual number was like around 47% and all along those lines, but that's definitely near 50%. But I've got to bring in Nick, and I've also got to ask Sasha a question as well.
Well, it's going to play out like this. It's a class action lawsuit, which means that tens of millions of Americans are going to receive a postcard saying, did you buy hash browns, tater tots, or French fries since 2019? And then you send in the card, and then maybe 2 years from now, you get this weird little check for $7 as your potato rebate.
Could be a potato rebate. Apparently, I think that Nick's got that usual thing where he's got that Mickey Mouse voice, so he might have to go out and in again because there's like a little bit of Mickey Mouse static going on there and everything. So we'll have to see what's going on with his mic and all along those lines. So hopefully they'll come back and he can talk about that as this rebate is going on. I did have a question to ask, because we know that sometimes just in terms, and we got Shaquille here, so maybe he might have some thoughts of this as well. But Sasha, and I know that he was saying this jokingly, because one, it's not a state, it's an entire country and everything. But in his conversation around tariffs, Trump floated this idea of Canada as a 51st state. So are you ready to become a member of the United States and all along those lines? And like I said, I do know that it was probably said in jest and as a joke and everything, but he did kind of float this idea of Canada, which we know is actually multiple provinces. It's not even just one area, it's multiple provinces, and it would be probably multiple states. But, too sad, too bad, as one of the comedians that I was watching last night said it, for Puerto Rico, which has been fighting for statehood for years, or even DC, which has been wanting statehood, because Trump is saying that our next state, because of the whole conversation around tariffs, and they were saying that it could impact y'all's economy there in Canada. Trump was saying, hey, well, maybe we'll just make y'all the 51st state. So are you ready to be a member of the United States?
Well, it's not up to me, of course, but I would like to make a case that it would be a unique situation when the territory of a single state is larger than all country USA. So I can't see it logically. Probably, first of all, it has to be broken into provinces
Right.
and accept each province separately. So at least it will not create the situation that I just described. But listen, again, as I said on many programs, I'll say it again. American people choose Donald Trump as its savior. And he has a fantastic team of J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and on and on and on. He had 100,000 people on the highest IQ level and geniuses. So why should we worry about economy, about Canada, about this, about that? Here is a savior. He is a chosen one. So let him do the job. Just enjoy yourself. Go to see movies. Go to see the Las Vegas shows. Go to Aruba. Do something productive.
Shaquille, what's your take on this notion and everything? Because, like I said, I did take it as a joke. I didn't take him seriously, just like I don't take Nick seriously when he says that he wants to take over the media landscape and everything. Even though we did have our first special from California that Brian Shulman did, there was a Save a Teen event that was yesterday on the network. We've had other specials too now that I think about it, but it was a very wonderful special that they did last night here on Pod TV and everything. But what's your take on this notion of this kind of joke that he threw out there of Canada being a 51st state?
I mean, like, who cares? Like, it's clearly a joke. It was meant as a joke. He was teasing Justin Trudeau and Justin Trudeau's terrible leadership of Canada. You know, and obviously it's never going to happen. So I don't know why people are in America are even having a conversation about, you know, statehood for DC and Puerto Rico and, oh, damn, Canada's going to get statehood. Like, what are you guys talking about? Like, it's clearly a joke. Like, what? Why is there even a conversation here?
It's not a joke. We've tried to take over Canada before.
There's a difference between Canada becoming by its own choice because of its ridiculous leadership of state and you taking over Canada. And I'd advise you very strongly not to do that. You touch one blade of grass on Canadian soil, and you'll get a full response from the entire Commonwealth.
Shaquille, but for the biggest job was
last time you didn't care about it. We came to the States, we burnt your bloody White House down, just so you know.
You can't even defend Ukraine. How can you defend Canada? Give me a break.
Sasha?
The joke was played by Donald Trump and Trudeau that after a lavish dinner and having so much food and drinks and so on, and then he said to Trudeau, well, now you have to hurry up to whatever Holiday Inn or wherever else you're going to rent the room. So he did not even provide accommodation, which is great. You know, I hope.
I think so.
Oh, you know, by the way, very soon, it could be as early as in March, could be election in Canada. Why not in February, you may ask? Why not in February? I'll tell you why. Because the NDP leader, Mr. Singh, he will have government pension if he would be still in the NDP leadership by February. So on March, he can go march in, have election, he will lose his election together with Trudeau, and that's not a big deal. But what about pension of Mr. Singh? How can you sacrifice your pension? It's impossible. He will go to work, he will attack United States, he will attack France, anybody else, just to stay past February and get his pension.
Rick?
So you could argue that the North America would work better if we just if we became in one single country with Canada and Mexico.
No, it definitely wouldn't.
Well,
100% wouldn't.
All right, now let me just make my argument. We have 5,000 miles of land borders between Canada and Mexico. If we merge with those countries, 5,000 miles of border aren't borders anymore. They go away.
Yeah,
So,
and we should.
And your point would be what exactly?
Well, then all we have to do is defend our ocean borders.
Yeah.
What about your southern land border?
Well, the southern border of Mexico is only 50 miles long, so we've reduced our land borders by 99%.
There we go. There. It makes sense. We tried to take over Mexico too, and what we should have never done is given up Afghanistan. We can't.
And to talk more realistically about making DC and Puerto Rico states, you'll never have that until those as states, DC is 91% Democratic. So until you have an overwhelming majority of Democrats in the House and Senate, this House and Senate will never vote to let DC become a state. Similarly with Puerto Rico.
DC should never be a state. It should never be a state. Like why would you have the capital as a state?
Why not? It's
similar countries that were federated the same way as what you were. Sorry, go on, Nick, and then I'll respond.
Oh, you mean DC being a state? DC has a population bigger than Wyoming. I mean, Wyoming is a state. So the thing is, there's no reason why it shouldn't, because it doesn't. It would be able to receive electoral votes. Same with Puerto Rico. The only reason it's not a state is that it's because of politics. And the reason Puerto Rico isn't is they won't vote in statehood. What we should have never done is given up Afghanistan. We should have taken it, kept it, and made it a state, and just tell the people in the Middle East to go stick it, or wherever the heck they are, in the middle of nowhere. We had won it fair and square. We took it over fair and square. And the United States needs to continue making America great again by conquering territories and making our place bigger, better, and stronger. And it will do so under Donald Trump.
What was you going to say?
No, Mark. I was halfway through saying something, and then I was trying to give a proper response to Rick.
Yeah.
So Rick, why exactly would there ever be an argument for making the District of Columbia, the country's capital, a state? Other countries that federated similarly at a similar time period as the United States didn't do that, right? The Australian Capital Territory, the ACT, is not a state with the same sorts of states' rights as the other states have got. For that very reason, most countries have got the same system. This is not a Republican conspiracy, a GOP conspiracy to hold down the Democrat votes of DC. District of Columbia, the nation's capital, is never ever supposed to have the same rights as the state. The same rights as states. Now, you can argue about Puerto Rico, but DC should never even be considered to be a state.
So the only reason is that it's the people who would argue for it would say it's taxation without representation. But because it's not a state, the people in DC, they don't get senators. I think they get one token non-voting member in the House of Representatives. They don't get to help determine who's president. Anyway, that's
they get a vote in the Electoral College, if I remember correctly.
Yes, but that is specifically by design. So don't live there if you don't want to. But I can tell you that with a per capita GDP of $250,000 a year, I think that the people that are living in DC are doing so by choice mostly. Right, those people that live there who are struggling, as DC has been, surrounded by poverty for decades, perhaps they should move. But the idea that there is a taxation without representation, look, if you feel that way, move to Delaware. I don't know.
All right, I'm not. It's not going to happen. So let's move on to something else.
So we had
somebody wants to speak about this 51 state.
Just to point out what Nick said is correct, because it does have a giant population there. Shaq, you even pointed out that, well, if you don't like living there, then you said that most of the people there that are living there know that, and most of them, but not all of them. That means there's still people there that are being taxed and unable to be represented. So now you have a place that has a larger population than other states. On top of that, if we want to be like our northern neighbors in Quebec, the capital of Canada,
Did you just say Quebec was the capital of Canada?
I mean,
Is that what you just said?
one of those capitals? Isn't that one of those capitals up there?
Ottawa.
Ottawa's
Ottawa,
the
yeah.
capital.
But then you got Quebec, that's its own state, separate.
No,
Look, we're not going to get into Canadian issues, and I don't think that
I mean, I'm just making stuff up because what you
Now,
just
I'd like to
about
just quickly address the things.
I mean, I'm just making stuff up because what you did about Washington was the same thing. DC, as Nick pointed out, has a larger population. And then we're talking about taxation without representation. And you made up the idea that, hey, you can just move. So I'm making up the idea that Quebec is the capital of Canada. It's got its own little thing.
Well done. What an insightful argument to make there, Jate.
I know.
You're very proud of yourself.
What you're saying
Yeah,
is
that pesky thing called the Constitution, right, where they carved off a bit of land and said this is the district, not the state, the district of Columbia, from which we will run the capital.
Council, quick question for you. And I know you're not a constitutional lawyer, however, but you do understand the Constitution. So, Nick, since you're the lawyer on the show, is the Constitution a living document that does change?
You're asking me to give legal advice on this network? No.
I'm just saying.
I'm not going to give you legal advice on this network.
Does the Constitution evolve and change?
I'm here to talk politics, but not law.
I mean, that is still politics. Does the Constitution evolve, or does it stay just one thing?
It just depends on who you are. Some people are strict constructionists.
Well, just really quickly, getting back to the whole. Hold on a second, just really quickly, because I did see Rick's hand, and this is getting out of off track and everything.
And DC does get to vote for president, by the way. I looked it up. They get 3 electoral votes. So
it is 3 electoral votes. I knew it was some electoral votes.
That's my future home in the United States, by the way, is Washington, D.C., the district. So
you're going to move to D.C. But I did, on one of our other shows, 2 things were brought up. One, there is, because we talked about this before, because I think one of the first times, because there was a major, and I get what you're saying, Shaq, about the people that are living there, but there's also a major homeless problem in DC, because the first time that I went and visited, and I forgot the gentleman's name, but he was
of course there is. The place was run by Democrats. What are you expecting?
But I'm just saying there was a major shelter there, and this was way back in like the 80s or something like that I went and attended the gentleman's shelter that he was running. I wish I could think of the gentleman's name, because he was very famous for running a shelter up there in the DC area, and that was way back in the 80s and everything. And like I said, his name is not coming to me, and I think he's passed away, if I remember correctly. But even in our own network, there was a conversation, because we've talked about some of these things that departments and this notion of efficiency in the government, and some of these departments that may disappear. And on the Urban Sentinel, which is one of our shows here on the network and everything, Reginald brought up the notion that there will be a lot of people that will be in the unemployment lines if those departments are utterly destroyed or gotten rid of and everything. And then that could create a kind of a financial woe on not just DC, but on the adjacent areas, because Maryland, where he is based at, a lot of those people are in government work. And I know that there are people in the administration, including Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, that want to trim those government jobs. And the same can be said for Arlington, Virginia, where I've known some people that live there as well. So what are we at all concerned about the impact that these government cuts could have on the adjacent states? That's my question.
No. That's like saying to me that, look, Shaquille, we better not do anything about the crime rate, because when thieves break into your house and steal your TV and take it down to the bloody pawn shop and then sell it, and then the police come and find it, if we cut down on crime, then look at all those people that are going to lose their jobs, right? Fat bureaucrats who are reaching in and stealing people's hard-earned money out of their pockets by using government power to do it in order to keep themselves in a job get no sympathy from me whatsoever when they lose their jobs. Now, I'm mostly directing that at the bureaucrats of my own government, because, again, I'm not American. I don't live in your country. But I can certainly tell you that watching bureaucrats cry will elicit absolutely no sympathy from me whatsoever. I do want to address something that Rick said. Yes. Rick mentioned about...
One more thing before we move on homelessness.
Okay, it's only my third attempt to get there, but okay.
Rick, you want to address this? It shows that Paris has homelessness of 333,000, Rick. Can you fact check that? I mean,
That
right now, when
seems, I
put
mean,
things on the
we didn't
internet,
see any homeless during the Olympics, and so what'd they do with them?
I don't know.
Well, the same thing as Governor Newsom does with them.
I
It's
picked
the
this
same
up in
thing
an
What the
article.
governor in Atlanta
Said
when
what
Atlanta
cities
had the
have the
Olympics.
most homelessness, and the thing is, they showed Paris, and this is a big number. This beats you in LA. This beats the heck out of San Francisco. Can you fact check this? Is this because you can't trust me?
Okay, so yeah, Google AI says outreach teams estimated that around 500 to 800 people were homeless in Paris. Another survey says 4,200. So these are like around 1% of that number that you're talking. There's not a third of a million homeless in Paris.
All right, so this could be just the
Because
internet
we're trying to make a point for a decade.
Wait, hold on. In all of France, that figure, is for all of France, which has what, 60 million people? So you're looking at one person and 180 being homeless.
And it's got multiple cities and everything. But Shaquille's been trying to make a point for a while, so I'm definitely going to turn it over to.
Go back to Shaq.
You made the point about don't blame Biden, but just blame the price gouging of these big corporations.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. So I said if you're going to yell at Biden, also yell at big companies for price gouging. Not all big companies, but like the potato cartel, the oil companies. So grocery stores, I don't know. It's hard to blame supermarkets because their usual profit margin is 2%, and they kicked it up to 3% in the past few years. It's like, okay, so we have to pay more for eggs so these guys can make a reasonable profit. I don't know. I mean, I'd be more pissed at the oil companies and the potato companies than Ralph's supermarket.
Why would you be mad at the oil companies when the government of the United States continues to strangle the oil producers here in the United States? You should be mad.
Yeah, but we don't. We made more oil than ever before in the past 3 years.
Yeah, that's because they relaxed their crazy rules. But the thing is, they had planned under the Harris Biden administration to continually to strangle big oil.
Yeah, but Biden then went back on all that and he said, all right, drill a freaking bunch of oil. So
yeah, right. Then that keeps the oil prices down. I mean, the thing is,
Yeah, but oil companies continue to receive hundreds of millions of dollars in subsidies, which
that
they
I have a problem with. Okay, Rick. See, that's what I have a problem with is corporate welfare. And the thing is, it is adamant. And one thing that your friend Elon Musk is playing for is more corporate welfare for his companies like Tesla and SpaceX. This is the thing that should be damned by the American public because there's so much corporate welfare going on, it's not funny. Warren Buffett made a very interesting statement. We'll have to fact check if it's true. He said Berkshire Hathaway paid $5 billion in taxes. He said if every Fortune 500 company had paid as much taxes as I did at Berkshire Hathaway, we would not have to collect an income tax. Now, that creates a very interesting math thing. If the Fortune 400 or the Fortune 500 companies, 500 times 5 billion, how much money is that? Are we talking about? And if they're not paying 5 billion, why?
So what the 2.5 trillion? I guess I don't know.
I don't know. 5 billion times 500.
It's $2.5 trillion.
Yeah. See. The thing is, this goes back to an internet. 2.5 trillion is not enough to cover.
So I have one more thing for us to argue about, which is Musk and Ramaswamy, want people who work for the government to work hard. They say they're looking for high IQ volunteers to work 80 hours a week on reducing government spending for zero money. And okay, if you want to be part of their attack force and volunteer for 12 hours a day, go ahead. But the idea that that everybody who works, that productivity has gone up tenfold since World War II. And the idea that, to deserve your pay, you have to work 50 hours a week. See, whether it's for the government or not, seems like BS to me. That we, after a century of increasing productivity, we kind of have a right to jobs that are not a frickin' ordeal. to jobs where you work 35 hours a week, where you get the 3 or 4 paid weeks of vacation a year, like the European countries. Why do we have?
Yeah, but the thing is, European don't have the productivity. I mean, I live in Europe, and I can tell you they're not near as productive as the U.S. And I'll also tell you this is just my empirical evidence. The people that are successful in the United States, including law practice, which is one reason I graduated away from it, you have to work 80 hours to 100 hours a week. In other words, you just got to get used to the fact you can't beat these people who are attorneys.
Isn't that most entrepreneurs in most fields
work 80 to 100 hours a week?
But isn't that most entrepreneurs in most fields?
You're right, Mark.
A variety of hours, way over. Most entrepreneurs I know don't work 40 hours and everything. Even though I was watching
this is a trait I've seen for successful people. They have one thing in common: they work 80 hours a week. And
how are their home lives? My dad was married 3 times. My dad worked 80 hours a week.
Yeah, there you go. We're probably very successful financially, right?
No, actually, no. He was a bad money manager. He was the greatest CPA. He was New Mexico's greatest CPA for decades. Never lost an audit. Just an awesome CPA, but disastrous marriages. Where he was never home. And when he was home, he was just asleep or sitting at his, doing more taxes.
There are side effects to these long hours. There's no question about it. But from my empirical evidence, when I was working with the attorneys that were very successful, starting in law school, and this is one reason I faded away from it, they would literally work 80 hours a week in law school. And then when they graduate, they work another 80 hours a week. The theory was most people make, let's say they made 60,000 a year working 40 hours, they could make 120 working 80. And then the law firms that hired them would pay them 6-figure salaries because they knew they bought somebody that has no problem going to the office and staying there and working 80 hours a week easily. And there's books written about it where some of these people, they would bill more than 24 hours a day. How do you build more than 24 hours a day? They build 24 hours and they build another 4 hours on their flight from LA to New York. And that's how they did it. And they built a 28-hour workday. So the workaholics, and this is just my empirical evidence.
But not everybody wants to live that way.
Well, I would agree. In Spain they don't. And so their GDP is lower. What am I supposed to say?
Also, you've got to look into the service industry.
I'm sure Shaquille, when Shaquille was working, which he isn't now because he wouldn't be on the network all the time, he probably worked a good 80 hours a week, doing his trading.
But Nick, what about the service industry that works those 80 hours and even more that don't get those giant paydays that you're talking about? For example, nurses work a ton of hours, but don't get those giant paydays that you're talking about.
If you work 80 hours a week.
Well, wait, Toby, what about your industry? You're in the video game industry. What about the crunch time for video game production?
There's levels. So, for example, if you get, and in the computer world, you can get what is the CCNA, which is dealing with cybersecurity. So your CCNA, you're basically running a network around Cisco. And that you're not going to end up working 80 hours a week. You're going to work when there's problems, and you're going to make a good amount of money when you do that. But then you have testers, for example, in the lower levels of the gaming industry that work more than 80 hours a week. You have some writers, honestly, Rick, many of the writers that write for places like IGN to Polygon and so on and so forth that actually do the constructive writing, doing the game breakdowns and everything else. They work more than 80 hours a week.
That's crazy because it's not just regular work. And for lawyers, you're doing creative thought 12 hours a day. That is
lawyers not doing creative thought. They're what they're doing is they're combing through meticulous, crazy cases and then writing huge briefs. Have you seen these briefs before the Supreme Court? I mean, you're talking about 100 pages.
But Nick, the same thing can be had in other industries. For example, like just talking about the gaming industry. If you're a tester, for example, you're combing through code. You're dealing the same meticulous thing, but you're not getting paid a ton of money for it. You're actually getting paid below minimum wage, which sucks. But yes, you're barely making by. And then if you take a look at the QA testers that are running even the testers, you take a look at the level designers, there's a problem going on. Honestly, Rick, you're out in California, you got Riot Games that is having a tremendous time right now because, well, and they were just coming off and they're still having it. Some of it dealing with sexual harassment stuff, but other dealing with the game developers themselves are struggling to make ends meet when a company is pulling home. They just released Arcane, which was one of the most expensive animation shows to be put out there. I think it was like $250 or $280 million just to produce, and to put it on Netflix, they got paid a ton of money, but the actual artists, the actual the game
none of it filters, none of it trickles down. Everybody's working in the jobs you're talking about for the opportunity to move up the pyramid, because the people at the top of the pyramid make tens of millions of bucks.
Yeah, they make lots of money and everything.
Hold on, there's a nickname for Disney, Mauschwitz, which refers to the amount of work that you'll have to do to move up the ladder.
Just really quickly along those same lines and everything, what is our thoughts? Because other countries have thought about doing this, and a lot of some people are fans of it, some people are not. But we just it's been decades since we've had the weekend, and there have been people that have been pushing for the 3-day weekend, saying that it will add to productivity and everything. But even and this may surprise some folks, but one of the kings of capitalism, which is definitely Henry Ford, made Saturday and Sunday days off for his staff as early as 1926. So we're talking almost 100 years ago. And he was one of the people that was keen to set down a 40-hour working week, because they said that was an altruistic move at that time, because it gave workers the opportunity to spend their downtime buying consumer products, keeping cash circulating through the economy. And then it was officially adopted, I think, by one of the presidents, I forgot which one, in 1932 in a bid to counter the unemployment caused by the Great Depression. So and I know we've talked about it before, this push for a 4-day weekend. I know that some of the European countries have had that. I'm not sure what it is like in Australia and everything. Shaquille,
there was
what is our thoughts around this motion of 4-3?
People pushing for a 40-hour work week 100 years ago had like this saying. I think it shows up on the TV show The Gilded Age, which is 40 hours for work, 40 hours for sleep, and 40 hours for what you will, which is you should have a few hours a week to just stick around.
Yeah, but the thing is, this whole idea of a 4-day work week, and I know in Europe they like that, because they're as they say, in the United States, capitalism is a religion. In Europe, capitalism is an economic way of life, but it's not a religion. And so what happens in the US, at least this is my working with very successful entrepreneurs, medical doctors, lawyers, is they don't work 4 days a week. That's a joke. I mean, they'll work 6-7 days a week. They'll put 80 to 100 hours in every week. And they're going to pull in, $500,000 a year. Where in Europe, they're not, I want to work 40 hours. Okay, fine. You'll make 60,000 a year. I mean, that's just the way it is.
So I will admit,
whatever you want to do.
I will point out, some doctors, some dentists, some other professions that you're even talking about, they do those 4-day work weeks. My sister, as a matter of fact, owns a dental office. She does a 4-day work week. She pulls home a good amount of money. And Rick, you're out in California. I'm sure there are.
Good luck if with my dentist, if you get a toothache on Friday, you're waiting till Monday. Actually, no, they're good guys. They would come in and open up the office for you. But
see, that's a choice. So if your sister says, "Well, I just want to work 4 days a week," that's fine. I mean, I started culling down. I used to work 6-7 days a week, and I started cutting back. Now I barely put in 4 or 5 days a week. Barely putting hardly any time at all, but that's a choice. Okay. And so the thing is, when you first get started, if you want to be successful, you got to put a lot of hours in. I mean, it's just the way it is. But once you built your practice up, you could scale back, or you can continue working.
Yeah, you can scale back or you can scale up. Hey, Nick, just really quickly, because I want to get to another topic before we and it's one that we've talked about before, but how much concern does everybody on this panel have about infrastructure, because one of the things that you oftentimes hear, and I know even here in North Carolina, we hear people that are concerned about the fate of the roads and how bad the roads are for those of you that drive and everything. And even if you are depending on mass transit, I know that even on the buses, you can feel the impact of a bad road and all along those lines. And even recently in Philadelphia, there was a woman that apparently was looking for a stray cat, and they're saying that she may have fallen into a sinkhole. So that means that they had a sinkhole right in the middle of a major, I believe that was a major city that she was in, and everything. And it was an abandoned mine that turned into a sinkhole and everything. So how concerned are we about this notion of the ways that the roads and the bridges are done? Because I think even
you're still in the 18th century with roads and bridges. Over here, they have high-speed rail. Okay, I don't even own a car. I sold all my cars. I got it along through high-speed rail lines. And Spain made a decision to connect all their cities with high-speed rail lines. So did China. The United States, you're still working with these old locomotives and still working in the 18th century. You think cars are the best, and you have this thing against mass transportation. I don't know why. Here it's very effective. You take buses, you take, I'll take a bus to a tram to a subway. I found out there's a difference. Subway to where I need to go, and poof, you're there in no time, rather than sitting in a stupid car in the city. So what they did here is they're much more advanced than the United States when it comes to putting in high-speed rail. So my question isn't repair those stupid roads. Let them all go to hell. Put in high-speed rail now. That's what
they've got that going on here in North Carolina, because Toby fact check me if I'm wrong, but I think they just built in one that's supposed to connect like Charlotte to this area, and a couple of other ones that are going to be done. I know there's one in Wake County that'll connect all of Wake County together that's being put in now and everything. But what is this? What are your thoughts around this notion of high speed rail? I mean, even on this show, a lot of times you're traveling around in your car.
Right. They said 20 years ago, they said just driving on LA roads will cause $600 a year worth of damage to your car from the potholes and everything else. I lost a car to a crappy road knocked the oil pan right off my car, or actually the transmission housing. So yeah, the roads are crap. There's one good road between LA and Vegas, 300 miles. You can drive that at 100 miles an hour if you're not afraid of getting a ticket, because they keep that in good shape because you're going to Vegas to give them all your money.
But Rick, I'm telling you go faster on the rails. The trains here run nearly 300 kilometers an hour, which is about 260 miles an hour. So I can go here to Zaragoza in an hour and a half on the rail, or I can get in a stupid car and be there in 3 hours. What would you rather do? Take the high-speed rail. I'm there in an hour and a half. So why isn't it California, which supposedly is more advanced?
We've been trying to do high-speed rail for decades, and we've spent maybe $1 billion, and we've got like 60 miles of track laid. If you want to yell at California government, yell at them about high-speed rail. Because
speaking of yelling at government and everything, just really quickly, because one of the other conversations we have often on this network is about the Mexican government and the immigration situation and everything. And if there is surveillance film all over the country and everything like that, why are we having this conversation? Because even the family of that missing Hawaii woman is demanding surveillance video of her crossing into Mexico, which means that there must be surveillance video all over the place. So shouldn't we be able to see these folks crossing over in the first place if there's all these surveillance cameras that are all over the country? Because even if you watch a good detective drama, they're trying to find the surveillance camera off on some TV or some road, because they've all got cameras around us and everything. So can we find these folks easier than we actually claim that we can find them?
Yeah, but that's one of the changes to immigration policy that the Congress would need to vote in. There are dozens of great things to try about the border, but you can't get Congress to do anything. And and the next 2 years probably the same deal, because they just, as you mentioned, it's the final count for Congress is 200 for the House is 215 Dems, 220 Republicans, -1 because Matt Gaetz already resigned. So that's an empty seat minus 2 or 3 more for Republican members of the House. The Trump wants to be in his cabinet. So you're looking at 215 to 216 or 17. So one lunatic on the Republican side can hold up anything. So good luck trying. Like, you maybe, I don't know. Anything that we do about the border is going to have to be really bipartisan to get enough votes.
And I doubt, and Rick, you're right. And I think the problem that we're going to run into is the same problem that you pointed out earlier, that it becomes so we're going to be locked on anything that we try and do, because you're going to have one individual that wants the extreme ideas and is going to be against that, and then you're going to have one individual or you're going to have the majority trying to push for, and then you're going to have to try this bipartisan, then you're going to have groups that are going to be against that. We're just going to be in that standstill spot again, and nothing's going to happen at the border.
And you could chip people the way you chip a dog so it doesn't go missing, but people that would make people freak out. But you could, track people through their phones, but that makes people freak out. Even on the right, it used to freak people out because it was considered the sign of the beast in the book of Revelation, that if you started...
hold on a second. Aren't people being tracked regularly anyway? Because I remember earlier in this network, certain people would come on the network and would talk about the phone, because a lot of times if you go on your phone, I think you even brought it up, Nick, a lot of that has got tracking devices, so they literally know what you're doing in terms of like how many miles you're walking. I know that I'll even get reports about what restaurants I went to and everything like that. So aren't we already to some degree being tracked by the phones that we have on?
Yeah, but the government can't. We don't have laws in place that let us use that technology.
Well, also the media needs to start, and the people need to start holding the government accountable for their horrible immigration policy. And the media doesn't do that because they just skip over things and they argue. And they from day one, since let's face it, Trump has the presidency, he's got the Senate, he's got the House, and he has most of the judiciary. Okay. So from day one, he needs to do something about immigration. If not, this network and all the other networks need to hold him, whoever stops immigration reform, accountable. Other than that, we're just wasting our time.
It could happen because the Democrats have been beaten up. They've been beaten up, beaten down. They're ready to compromise on immigration.
Well, here's the thing.
They don't even have a plan. I mean, the real problem is show me one immigration plan.
But Nick, here's actually even a bigger problem, because his only plan that he's put out there is mass deportation, mass deportation, mass deportation.
At least it's a plan.
The reason that we have so much trouble on a lot of these things that get stuck in Congress and get stuck everywhere, you have lobbying. So with a lot of money that's going to be lost in these areas from the individuals that are hiring these individuals coming across the border in the first place, they're going to do a lot of lobbying. That's the whole agriculture or the agro business coming at Trump saying, hey, we'll give you this money if you don't do. And so will that happen? And will that be the reason why a lot of this immigration will just be up in arms? And then that reporting you're asking for will get covered over because you do have a messaging. I mean, that is the greatest thing that I think the Republican Party it has in their weapons box is the messaging. They are great at messaging. They are great at pinpointing what they need to put out there and what buttons they need to push. Great at that. And are they going to be able to be held accountable when you begin not shipping people back on the mass deportations? And then that messaging machine comes out and says, this is why. And just as we talked about yesterday, how I completely agree with you. The thing they're going to say and they're going to run with, I'm cleaning up after Biden. This is a big mess that he left. I'm having trouble cleaning up after this or whatever. And it's going to be a blame game.
But we don't want to listen to cleaning up blame game. We want to see results.
I agree.
In other words, and the thing is, the media needs to hold the government accountable for the immigration problem. Because the thing is, if you look at it, what do we have? 15 million illegal immigrants that didn't pay anything to come into the United States. Like I said, hey, that could be a profit center. Charge them 10 grand. Oh, they won't pay it. Then deport them. Okay. But if they do pay it, hey, bring it on. We need the 10 grand for each immigrant. Do the numbers on that. 15 million times 10,000. How much money is that? Rick.
Well, I mean, if you've been watching the network, and I don't agree with this tactic, but Jonathan Lockwood has been talking, who is on the Ukraine, Russia, China show, has been talking about this notion of basically money that would be paid to the immigrants to go back, and also a kind of bounty for folks to basically go after them, and all along those lines. And you can go back and watch some of the shows to hear his proposal, but I think that could add to a Wild West kind of mentality. As we were getting ready to wind down, and I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts about this and everything. I don't think we give enough credit to the Good Samaritans of the world and everything along those lines. So I mentioned earlier that a gentleman that literally was just going to pick up a package because he was in Indiana, and he found 2 babies who were in the backseat of a stolen car out there in the freezing rain, and he actually rescued those folks and everything, those young people, and all along those lines. So I just wanted to give a shout out again to the Good Samaritans of the world, because sometimes we don't give them enough credit, and it is definitely the holiday season. So, like I said, I did not catch the gentleman's name, but he literally, I think, was looking out his window because he was expecting a Christmas gift or some sort of package, and he found 2 babies that had been left in a ditch area as well. So definitely, I mean, that's where they were found and everything, because I think the stolen car was in the ditch. So just y'all's thoughts around the Good Samaritans of the world is just being an example of them.
No one wants to listen to Good Samaritans, not at least not on TV. But I just did a quick analysis. We may be able to collect 1.5 trillion if we make the immigrants that were illegal come clean with a $10,000 fine. $1 trillion is a lot of money, and the thing is, we could use that to cover the huge interest on the national debt, at least for 1 year.
Well,
So,
okay,
let's make it a profit center.
but you need legislation to do any of this. If you want to charge immigrants VIG,
It's
just
just a
10% across the board tax on their income in the U.S. Besides it, just for them being here, on top of what they pay in other taxes, you still need to pass laws.
I understand you need to pass laws, but what I'm saying is that thing is, rather than just mass deportation, which costs money, or spending $1,000 to get people to rat on people, which costs money, let's turn it into a profit center.
Well, speaking of turning things into profits and everything, what is our thoughts around? Because even Rick has mentioned some of these folks that are Trump nominees that have had past indiscretions of one sort or another. So we're going to possibly lose a second nominee, and actually a third, because the DEA guy left as well. So it's either 3 or 4. I've lost track now. That withdrawn. Another DEA guy withdrew. Matt Gaetz withdrew, and there's a push to get rid of Pete Hegseth and everything along those lines. But they're saying that if they get rid of him, the next person in line would be DeSantis. And Nick, you spent some time in Florida. So what is your idea of DeSantis as a defense secretary? Because apparently he's the next in line should Pete not get the job.
Yeah, what experience does he have in defense? I mean,
his job in the military was collecting pee samples. I'm sure he had other jobs, but he was part of JAG.
I mean, the thing is, this guy's hiring practices are really just absolutely horrible. No wonder why all his businesses went under. I mean, any person who's part of an HR department knows you comb through the CVs of the people and you find the best and the brightest and you hire them. But that's not how this administration is running. What he's doing is finding who's the biggest celebrity. I'm surprised Kim Kardashian isn't, running the Secretary of Agriculture, because she's a big name. I mean, that's how he chooses people. In other words, who's the latest celebrity? Oh, Taylor Swift. Well, let's put her in charge of the Department of Education.
He doesn't like Taylor. He'd never give Taylor a job.
This is celebrity Washington, D.C. So DeSantis has no experience whatsoever running the Department of Defense. He doesn't have a clue. He probably doesn't even know which way gun shoots.
Now, in fairness, because I was a fan of the show JAG, that is a major law enforcement agency within the military. So if he worked at JAG, which is what Rick just said, he worked at the JAG office. So he does have some military background.
That really makes
anybody wants to jag off. Nobody wants to jag off.
Yeah. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous who's being hired for these positions.
So
it's going to continue because
DeSantis made it up to the rank of lieutenant commander, which I guess is a Navy rank, and I don't know how the Navy ranks go, where that fits in, what
Yeah, but you know, because he has a college education, they get officer status immediately. You know, so he's just. But does he have any real experience running a defense department? No.
Well, I'm certainly glad that my comments to Rick about the potato issue and price gouging has stimulated such great conversation. But I guess we're now.
I didn't vote for Trump. You know, are you kidding me? I'm not that stupid. You know, it's just not happening.
All right, so lieutenant commander is somewhere above lieutenant and below commander. So it's a very low, it's a junior officer.
Yeah, and I'll make him head of the whole department. That's brilliant.
Well, like I said, he'll be the head of the department, but it's time to get out of here. We've got modern investment at 1:00, and we've got some other stuff coming, including science and science and medicine. And I think we've got a new show. Is that starting today? Or is that starting later on?
We're just doing a test for Startup Masters. Okay, so that'll be coming. A test will probably be hitting our network in January, and it's about startups organized out of Duke University. So,
and we'll be having a show about housing. We'll be having a show about housing and other activist types that Stella Adams will be doing. That'll start in January as well. So we got 2 new shows that'll be starting in January. But right now, let's get on
medicine in a couple hours.
Yep, see you on that show.